Well, I'm showing it's time to start, and so welcome to the webinar tonight. My name is Mark Fincher, and say to your sons. And when I talk about what not to say to your sons, what I am referring to is how we speak to our children. Specifically, I'm going to be sharing my experiences as a son and what that meant to me. And so I want you to recognize that I'm not pointing anybody out in particular, but a lot of what I'm going to say is probably going to affect you in some way because you're going to recognize that you've either experienced this yourself or you've actually done this with your own kids, or you've maybe even seen somebody else do it with their kids. But as we talk about these things, I want you to recognize this is an opportunity for change. And change is what I'm all about. So first of all, I want to thank you for participating tonight in the webinar. I love teleconferencing, and I'm really appreciative to Zoom for making this technology available to us, because in doing that, it allows me to share what I want to share with you. And hopefully you're going to get something really beneficial from this. I want to also point out to you that in doing this, you're taking time yourself. And I appreciate the fact that you're taking time out of your day to make this possible, to learn something, to grow, and to be looking for something new. Because if we're not looking, we're not actually going to find anything. We have to be looking to find things. So thanks for being here. I want to make a point that in everything I'm going to talk about tonight, I don't lay blame on anyone. And I really want to make this clear because blame is something that is damaging, and I don't want to be damaging anyone. So you're going to hear me make some comments about experiences in my life. I'm not laying blame. I'm actually looking at things in a way that allows me to say, hey, I've experienced some things. What can I learn from it? What is it that I've actually experienced that is beneficial out of this experience? And when I say beneficial, even though the experience may not have been something that was good or pleasant, I gained something from it. I actually find that when I start looking at some of the worst experiences I have had in life, when I look at them closely, there's something that I'm actually gaining from them, which makes them valuable to me. Because when I start seeing what I'm gaining, it adds value to everything I experience in life, just like you can. Remember that, you can do the same thing. So this is going to be fun. I think you're going to chuckle a little bit. I think you're going to find that you're going to have some emotions come up as I talk about some of these things because you're going to relate to them. And you're going to find ways to change your mindset. And I hope that's important to you to be able to change your mindset. You're going to see your sons or your daughters in a different way. You're going to see them in a more important way than maybe you've been looking at them, because there's always room for that kind of improvement. You're going to also know how you can speak differently. And I really want to point out, a lot of what I want to talk about tonight is how we as parents talk to our children. What it is that we're doing that actually helps them or hinders them. And I'm not going to put good or bad in there because it's up to the child to interpret what we're doing. But we can certainly do some things in the way that we talk to people that will be more beneficial than other ways. So be watching for that. Be attuned to what you might be gaining out of that. I hope that what you come out of from this also is a closer connection to your son or daughter. I want you to visualize that you can be better connected, that your relationship actually is constantly improving. And as it improves, you feel much, much closer. Because that's what I'm experiencing in my relationship with my children. So I want you to recognize that you can have that too. And if you do these things, you're going to find that you do. couple of other interesting aspects to this. You may find that you actually have a better relationship with your parents. You find that it's easier to talk to them. As I've worked on these things and I worked with my children, I realize, oh, I can see how my parents were talking to me in that way, but I can change the way the conversation goes so that I actually improve that relationship. Even though they may still even use some of that language, I can improve the relationship from my side. And it's really beneficial to look at it that way, that if I make the improvement, the relationship's improving. You don't have to wait for them to change. And if you're married, you may find that your wife or your husband is actually closer to you. That as you work with your children, it actually draws you closer to your spouse. As you change your language with your children, you end up changing your language with everyone else around you. And your spouse is certainly going to be very happy about that, because this is uplifting, building language. So I hope that you see that that's possible. Now, I want you to also recognize that I have some rules for my webinars. I want you to be respectful of everyone, respectful of me as the person presenting, respectful of the other participants in the webinar, because as we do that, we actually are starting to create safety for one another. And we all gain more out of the experience when we feel safe. I also want you to be managing the way that you communicate during this. So, if you need to take a phone call or something, feel free. It's a web conference, you can do that. But be mindful of perhaps unmuting yourself or something like that. Be careful about that. I'll have a question and answer period, but I want you to be mindful of how you can affect the way that this webinar goes. So be mindful of how you're communicating. And then be present. When I'm talking about being present, I'm saying be invested in the discussion. Actually, be here to be learning something, not just to be sitting back and going, well, this is nice, but actually be looking for gold nuggets that you can take away, because as you look for that, you gain so much more out of the experience. And quite frankly, when you're doing that, it actually helps me deliver more to you, because you're wanting something more. I'm able to feel that more. And I really hope that I can find some inspiration as we discuss things tonight that help you out. So I hope that you're willing to agree to this. And moving on from there, I'll tell you this much. I am fully invested in those rules, because I want you to be safe. I want you to be invested, and I'm totally invested. That's what I'm here. I'm giving you my 100% because I want you to get the most out of this experience. You're taking your time, and I'm taking mine. Let's make it a win-win situation for us, and let's add that extra win to the relationships that we have with other people. So we get that win-win-win relationship going, and it's a beautiful thing when we start to see that happening. All right, I want to share some things with you, so I hope it's okay with you that I get personal here, because in being personal, I'm exposing myself a little bit, and sometimes people aren't really keen on having that kind of an experience where somebody's sharing something about themselves. So I hope I have your permission to do that. But I want to share some things that really matter to me, some insights I've received in looking back on what happened to myself through my life. So I want to talk about a time when I was about 6 or 7 years old. Now, I was a boy, okay? And I think you know what I mean by that. I was rambunctious. I was excited. I talked a lot, at least to myself, even if nobody else was listening. I just was full of energy. And with that energy came things that perhaps I shouldn't have been doing. And I remember this one time I did something. I don't even remember what it was. I just remember the experience went like this. I did something, and it was during the daytime, and my mom was not happy with me. She was really irritated. And she looked at me and she said, I want you to come here into your room, sit on the edge of your bed, and you're going to sit there and wait until your father gets home. Now, when I talk about this, I go back to being that child, and I'm now sitting on the edge of the bed, and I'm petrified because I know I'm in real deep doo-doo. Okay, I'm in trouble. I'm going to get something. Okay, wait until your father gets home. What does that mean? Well, to a 6 or 7-year-old, what does that mean? There's no explanation. And perhaps my mother even said, I'm really mad at you, or your dad's going to be so mad at you. I don't remember anything other than wait until your father gets home. You sit right there on the edge of the bed until he does. Okay, I had to sit there for a couple of hours. That was an unpleasant experience just sitting there as a fidgety 6 or 7-year-old. But what was even worse in the experience was I was trying to figure out what's going to happen when dad gets home. I had all these things running through my head of what could possibly happen when dad gets home. And I knew my mom was fuming mad because there were other times my mom got mad and things were dealt with differently. This was different. And I'm just petrified. I'm sitting there just going, I am going to die. Something horrible is going to happen. And so I started playing out all these different things that could potentially happen. And a lot of them weren't pretty. There was blood, there was bruising, there was, I don't know, just everything going through a little boy's head as to what could possibly happen when dad gets home. And this was for 2 hours, 2 very long hours. So what's the takeaway from this? Well, first of all, what happened when my dad got home was not anywhere close to what I had imagined. Okay? My dad was a man who loved me very much. Now, he would discipline me, but he didn't go to extremes in doing that. And one of the things that I discovered as I thought about this later in life was my dad really didn't like disciplining me because there was something there that said to him, this isn't quite right. It's not appropriate to, be beating a child, to be causing pain. He knew that. And so he was very careful in how he handled me. Now, I'm not going to say he was perfect in that, but he loved me. And I recognize that now. But back then, mom told me dad was mean because wait until your father gets home. That stuck in my head. My dad's mean. And I carried that with me for years because of those words. Because I interpreted that as dad doesn't like you, and so you're going to really get in a lot of trouble. And I remember worrying about never getting in trouble. So I changed my behavior. This only happened to me a couple of times. So I changed my behavior. But this is the point of why I'm telling you this. I changed my behavior because what I was thinking up here and what I was feeling in here was that I had no value. And I started hating myself because, well, you do these things to make mom and dad mad. You're no good. You're a horrible person. So you better shape up because you're no good. And that really was detrimental in my life because it put me on a path of self-hate, of lack of self-worth that really affected who I became for decades. Now, again, I'm not blaming my parents. They were working with what they understood, what they had seen and what their parents had seen and what their parents, it's a generational thing that goes on and on and on. And I can't blame them for doing that. They didn't know better. And I can't put any kind of blame on somebody for not knowing something. but it did have an effect on me. And it really made me resent my dad for years. And I actually came to recognize just a few months ago, it wasn't my dad. He wasn't the one who was super upset. It was my mom. And it was a transference of that anger from my mom to my dad in my eyes. I didn't know what was really going on. Now, did my mom realize she was doing that? Absolutely not. All she knew was she had a son who was being out of control in some way, and she needed him to be under control. So she used the method that she had learned to put control on a child. And because of that, it affected me. And most of that effect was me. It was my interpretation. I thought it through, I attached an emotion to it, and I carried that with me for decades because I didn't know any better. Think of it this way. If you start looking at what you're doing in your life, do you make mistakes? And obviously, you're going to answer, yeah, I make mistakes. When we make those mistakes, are we beating ourselves up over them? Or are we taking them as an opportunity to say, hey, I learned some things from that mistake. Here are the things I should be doing. And you name off the things you should be doing that you learned from those mistakes. And here are the things I shouldn't be doing. Okay. And sometimes you have a lot more on this side than on this side. But does it matter? Because you're learning from the experience. And that experience becomes valuable to you when you start looking at what are those lessons learned. But if you attach an emotion to that experience, and instead you just say, that's bad, that was horrible, that was stressful, that was infuriating, whatever emotion we attach to it, if we're not looking for the lessons learned, we are missing the boat. Because now that mistake becomes a failure because it's blocking us. And we're allowing it to block us by keeping that emotion in the way. So instead of being able to say, oh, here's a step I can use to move up to the next level, instead we're going, here's a block. And the next time this comes up, it's a block. And the more we hit that, the more we actually strengthen that block. And it keeps us from actually being able to move forward. That's what a failure is. When we don't recognize the lessons learned from mistakes, we make our mistakes failures. And we pile up enough failures in our lives, we see ourselves as a failure. And I'm wanting you to recognize today, you are not a failure. You, my friends, are wonderful people. You are good. Each one of you is a good person. Each one of you is trying to do something better. But perhaps, just like my parents and like myself as a young adult, didn't know any better. And when I started recognizing that, instead of being resentful and regretful about what I had done in the past, because as a father, I didn't do things perfectly either. I was repeating patterns that I had learned. But when I found out that there were different ways to deal with my emotions, to deal with the problems that children bring to light in my life, all of a sudden I started changing myself. And that change, for me, has been completely worth all those experiences. Because I can now see this is where I attached an emotion to something that affected my life in horrible ways sometimes, holding me back, keeping me from being successful because I allowed it to keep me from becoming successful. When we recognize that those types of situations occur, we can say, well, okay, but what did I learn from that? What should I be changing so that when that happens again, I can act differently? Rather than just going into my default reactions, how can I act differently? How can I look at myself and say, no, I'm not going there this time? So I've done that with my own children. I've had experiences with my children where somebody has a blow up, and I can just stand there and I just smile. And I just say to myself, I know how this is going to turn out. And this is how it turns out. I'm quiet. I listen. I then provide some advice. I provide some counsel to them. And as they start to listen, because I'm quiet about it, they start to look at me differently. The emotion starts to subside and it comes down. And as it comes down, suddenly they're open to a connection. And I'm then able to go over to them, put my arm around them, and say, I love you. And I know, even though this is hard right now, perhaps hard for both of us, even though it's hard, I love you. And I know that we're going to get through this. That has been a game changer in my family. I've often asked my son, hey, would you prefer dad from a year and a half ago or dad now? And he looks at me and he says, now. There's no doubt in his mind. He wants what he's got now. And he's got hope more for the future because, well, if dad's this much better in a year and a half, where's he going to be in another year and a half? Things get better when we're consciously looking at how we're acting. So I want to try a couple of things with you, and I hope that you are able to work with me on this, okay? Because may bring up some real emotion for you. But I want to do this because it brings a point out. So let's go into a scenario. Let's talk about how the dishes aren't getting done. And you have a child who's got an assignment to work on the dishes and they're not doing it. So if I come up to you as the child and I go, why aren't you getting that done? You're supposed to be getting the dishes done. Why are you so lazy? Now, obviously, the feeling you get from that isn't a positive one. But if instead I were to come to you and say, hey, look, the dishes over there, they're piling up and the kitchen's becoming a mess. And it's going to make it hard for us to be able to actually prepare meals. And it's just really an eyesore and it just doesn't feel comfortable for us in the family. Would you please take an opportunity to work on some of those so that the kitchen improves and we have some clean dishes? Can you do that for yourself and for the family? Would you be willing to do that? Now, obviously, depending on where your current relationship is with your child, the direct approach might get more results right now. But let's go back to what the feeling is that we're creating when we're coming and pointing and being that direct. What we're telling the child is, you are the problem. But when we start inviting them to work on a problem, they begin to see themselves as the solution. So let me quickly diagram this for you. All right, so when you look at this, okay, we've got two people here. We've got the parent, we've got the child. Now, when you take the direct approach, you start pointing energy towards them that becomes very piercing. And they look at themselves as the problem because we're pointing directly at them. You're the problem. But if you take the other approach where you point out, here's the problem, and they begin to see that as the problem, what you're telling them is, you are the solution. And then they can look at the problem and say, I am the solution. Now, it's not always going to work. And sometimes some form of directness is required to get them to actually act. But it doesn't have to be directness with negativity. It can be directness with love, just saying, look, I understand you don't want to do this right now, but I need you to do it. Please get it done. That's very different than, why aren't you getting it done? You're being lazy. Okay? There's a difference in the type of directness. So I hope you can recognize that there are different ways of looking at this kind of scenario. And I found that by enrolling my children, enrolling my wife, enrolling people I work with, when I start enrolling people into what I want to be solved, they start to see a vision of who I am and how they can fit into that solution. And by doing that, people really become more willing to actually produce something good. They become creative because now they find value in themselves rather than being devalued. I hope that makes sense for you. And as I talk about that, one of the things that I think we really miss out on in life is that by saying somebody's a solution rather than a problem, what we're actually doing is we're adding people to our own team. Because when we point at somebody, we drive them away, we're pushing them away. But when we invite them in to become a solution, we're bringing them into our team. And by becoming a member of our team, we win. They're winning because they see value in themselves, and people around us start winning because solutions start being created by our combination. And that's how real solutions happen in the world, is when people come together, not when they're being pushed away, but when they come together, that's how solutions are created. And to envision that, I hope that you can take some time to see yourself becoming more by looking at what it is that you can do to become more. And one of the things that I like to do as a mentor is help people to become more. Because in this world right now, families are falling apart. Suicide rates are going up. It's scary because every year, if you look at the reports from the CDC, every year the suicide rates are going up. And it's going up among children. It's going up among adults. It's just every area except for maybe one or two demographics consistently is going up. I don't want to see that continue because I value the people around me. And I want you to value the people around you because they're worth it, just as you're worth it. So how do we work on this? How do we start making connections to solve the problem of being so disconnected? Well, we start working on ourselves. And one of the ways that I would invite you to start looking at how you can invest more in yourself is to get a mentor that can help you move along those lines. So what I do as a mentor is I help people. Okay, I help people by holding them accountable. I help them by giving them tools to actually see and do more. I try to make sure that I'm so focused on what people are trying to accomplish that they feel confident that they can move forward. So who is this for? Who is mentoring for? Well, from my perspective, mentoring is for moms, for dads, for adult children. It's for anyone who is looking to make an improvement in life by trying to accomplish something that they want. And as a mentor, I provide that opportunity. So I'd like to offer to you something that I've paid literally thousands of dollars for. I provide opportunities for mentoring that at this point, they're able to see how they can move forward. They're able to have an accountability to someone that gives them a little extra drive. And I give insights that really get to the core of many of the problems that are holding them back, because I've trained myself and I've been trained to see those things that are holding people back. I hope that you can recognize that this is something that's valuable to anyone in life. Whether you're paying for a mentor or you find somebody who will help you out, that can be of great benefit to you. So what I'm offering to you tonight is a mentoring package where I provide 5 mentoring appointments for 30 minutes apiece. It's done through teleconferencing, so you don't have to leave home. You don't have to leave work. You can do it from a place that's safe for you and is easy for you, where we can get together and be able to find ways to find solutions. Because I'm going to invite you to become part of the solution to the problems you're facing. Now, how much does this cost? It's $227 for those 5 appointments. And I can tell you this, that's a great deal. And in addition to all those other benefits that I've talked about, I'll also include a bonus of my latest CD, Learning How to See, which helps you to find new opportunities in life. So if you're interested in that, I'd invite you to contact me. You can do that through my webpage, livingtreeconnections.com. You can do that through my Facebook page. You can look me up, Mark Fincher, or you can look up Living Tree Connections, and you can contact me through Messenger there. If you happen to have my phone number, you can call me or text me, but get a hold of me and let's get together and find a way for you to start moving forward. Because I'm there 100% for you in that relationship. I'm going to be focused on you moving forward. So thanks for attending the webinar. I hope that you found something valuable here that you can then take as a new opportunity, something that you can do to change a relationship that maybe isn't where you want it to be today, but start envisioning where it can be tomorrow as you change your language. So thanks for attending. I'm Mark Fincher, and have a great night.